represent the values that you stand for. Click the link below for God, Family, and Guns merchandise. Welcome to a series called The End of Times, where we're going through the book of Revelation verse by verse to see what it is we can expect to happen in the end times, or the time Jesus refers to as the end of the age. But more importantly, what our roles are, what it is we should be doing if we truly want to be about our Father's business as we watch the coming of His kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. And with many episodes, I always say, you can't just jump into Revelation. You got to go back and really study it verse by verse. It really undercuts the prophecy that God is trying to share. So where we are in the book of Revelation is we've made it to chapter 17, where we see a harlot riding the beast from the sea. And we spent many episodes talking about what this harlot is. And then we kind of turned our focus on the beast. And that's we're going to pick it up right where we left off. In chapter 17, we've kind of bounced around a little bit because we broke it up into talking about the harlot, then the 10 horns of the beast, which is what we're talking about now, and then we're going to talk about the 7 heads and then the beast itself. So we're going to go a little bit further than we have over the last few episodes, so bear with me. We are going to read about the 7 heads, but we're going to kind of just put them on hold and come back to them as we continue to talk about these 10 horns, and we will introduce the 7 heads today. So we'll pick it up where we left off. Revelation 17, starting in verse 3. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast, which was full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, having in her hand a golden cup full of the abominations and the filthiness of her fornication. And on her forehead a name was written, Mystery Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots, and the abomination of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the saints and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I marveled with great amazement. But the angel said to me, Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. All right, we're going to pause there for a second. We're going to keep reading, but I just want to pause because, again, we did several episodes on the harlot. Now, I want to make a note here that you have a beast. And all these things are figurative things. They represent something. You have the beast. It represents something. You have the 7 heads. They represent several things. Then you have the crown, or the horns. They represent certain things. And the harlot represents something. And they all are kind of playing a role in this beast. The harlot is riding the beast. So the beast is something, the horns are of the beast. They are on it as part of its body. The heads are part of the beast as part of its body, but the harlot is actually riding as if it is in control of this beast. And these are all important notes to make as we continue to walk down this path. So let's keep going. But the angel said to me, Why do you marvel? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and will ascend out of the bottomless pit and go to perdition. And those who dwell on the earth will marvel, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they see the beast that was and is not and yet is. Here is the mind which has wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits. There are also 7 kings. 5 have fallen, 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he must continue a short time. And the beast that was and is not, and is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7, is going to perdition. All right, I'm going to pause right there, because again, we're going to come back to these 7 heads, but it's important to notice here that these are, there's a lot going on here, so I don't want to simplify it. But these are kingdoms and kings who have they don't reign at the same time. So just keep that in the back of your head. Let's continue on 12. And the 10 horns which you saw are 10 kings who have received no kingdom as yet, but they receive authority for 1 hour as kings with the beast. These are of one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. These will make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb will overcome them, for he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and those who are with him are called chosen and faithful. All right, these crowns here, these are kings, and we've spent a few episodes talking about these kings. They're 10 kings. They received 10 crowns. They receive their authority for a short while, and I want an important note we made is that they are of one mind, meaning they reign at the same time. So let's kind of keep that separate, and that's kind of why I gave you the note of the 7. We'll come back to those, because I mean we dedicate many episodes to the 7 heads, which we will, and we'll talk about them a little bit today. But these 10 horns, these are 10 kings who will rule at the same time, graciously. They're of one mind. They'll graciously submit their authority to the beast. Now, I want to take a little bit of time and just kind of give some more detail into these 10 horns, try to, what are they doing, who are they, what's going to happen. Now, a couple things we notice. If we go back to Daniel, and we talked to Daniel that when he saw a beast with 10 horns, it did not have the 7 heads, and again, we'll come back to that. But it did have the 10 horns, and 3 of those were uprooted. 3 of those horns were taken out and replaced by the Antichrist, the little horn. And that's a very important note to make, because here what we're seeing in Revelation is that they are of one mind. They give their authority to the beast and to the Antichrist and to the dragon, but yet 3 of them have been uprooted. There's a couple things that we can see here. Either you had the 10 kings, and 3 of them at some point said, this is not okay what we're doing, and they caused an uprising, and they were taken out, and most likely replaced with 3 other kings, and then those are these kings that we're talking about here. Or it's the 10, 3 are taken out, and really what we're talking about when we talk about these 10 kings is we're talking about 7 kings. I think most likely it's going to be the latter, because if you're talking about 10 different kingdoms, somebody's going to have to replace somebody. Somebody's got to be in charge of certain kingdoms. So my guess in all this, and the best interpret, because we can only base it on what we see in Scripture. We don't want to make any assumptions. Clearly 3 are taken out, and the Antichrist by the Antichrist. And that's a clear assumption to make of these 10 kings. Now, with that being said, well, let's talk about where these kingdoms quite possibly could be, because the harlot is different. We're talking about the 10 kings. The harlot rides the beast. The harlot is control. The beast depends on the harlot. The harlot is like the beast's master. It depends on her, and I've kind of told you what I think. The harlot is most likely the United States is my best guess based on the description of Babylon in Revelation. But I could be wrong. Again, that's just based on the description in Revelation. But the harlot is a separate thing, and it is riding the beast, and that's an important note to make. So you have 10 kings who are kind of to some degree being controlled by the harlot. Now, well, where are these? Well, there's an important note. We kind of jumped past it when we were back in 14, but we have to come back to it. If we go back to when we first saw this beast from the sea in Revelation, it says in 13, then I stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on his horns 10 crowns, and on his heads a blasphemous name. Now the beast which I saw was like a leopard, his feet like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. And the dragon gave him power, his throne, and great authority. So what you're looking at here is you're looking at a beast that is made up essentially of a leopard, a bear, and a lion. Now let's go back to Daniel's prophecy, and this is going to give a better idea of these areas we're talking about, these 10 kings we're talking about. So if we go back to Daniel, and we look at when he saw the 4 beasts, when he saw the beasts, he saw 4 of them. There were 4 of them when Daniel saw it. It says this in 7. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and a vision of his head while on his bed. Then he wrote down the dream, telling the main facts. Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven were stirring up the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I watched till the wings were plucked off, And it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on 2 feet like a man, and the man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second, like a bear. It was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth. And they said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. After this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. After this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking into pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were there before it, and it had 10 horns. So what we see is we see these 4 beasts, and this is in Daniel's day, and most scholars would argue, because what Daniel saw was you see in the future rise of empires, rise and falls of empires. And most scholars would argue that what we're seeing, and biblically this is a reasonable argument as well, is that the prophecy is about Israel. The prophecy is about the nation of Israel. That's what this whole thing. And when we're talking about a beast, we're talking about something that persecutes, scatters, and destroys or enslaves, or a combination of all those things, Israel. So if we look at the lion, most people would say that that is the Babylonian Empire. If you look at the bear, most people would argue that's the Persian Empire, because the Persians then conquered the Babylonians and ruled over Israel. And then finally, Alexander the Great, the leopard, comes and conquers all of them, and then he rules over Israel. And then, of course, we get to this iron beast, and we're talking about a Roman Empire. But it then exceeds into the future empire of the Antichrist. So if we really kind of take a moment and look at this, the beast himself, the beast in Revelation, is made up of the Greek Empire, it's made up of the Persian Empire, it's made up of the Babylonian Empire, and it's made up of the Roman Empire, is what this beast is. So these 10 kings will come from these empires. Meanwhile, you got the harlot really controlling its finances, primarily controlling its finances, its revenue. The harlot is purchasing everything from this beast. That's where the gold cup, the purple, and all that come from. The blood of the saints of the martyrs, so that, the beast is going to war against the Antichrist. Of course, the harlot's going to go along, or the beast is going to war against the saints, and of course, the harlot's going to go along with that. And ultimately, what you have here is you have, because of, where are these 10 kings? They're somewhere within the former Roman, Grecian, Persian, and of course the Babylonian empires. But that's a lot. I mean, that includes Ethiopia, Egypt, Persia, Turkey, most of Europe. That includes the Middle East, all of the Middle East for the most part, with the exception of Saudi Arabia, and that'd be about it. So, as we kind of continue to walk down this path, I just want to make it very clear as we're talking about with these crowns, we're talking about the beast is essentially a giant empire that's going to persecute, scatter, enslave, destroy, or a combination of all those things, Israel. And it is made up of 10 kings, or 10 kingdoms, that are all of one mind, and they give their authority to the Antichrist, who got his authority from Satan. And they are of the Persian, Roman, Grecian, and Babylonian empires, all while being ridden by some sort of country or empire that just buys a bunch of stuff, deeply engaged in pornography and sexual immorality, and has no problem slaughtering saints. So that's what you're dealing with this beast. Now we're going to come back to the 7 heads a little later. But ultimately that's a lead into that, is these are 7 kingdoms as well, but they kind of have come and gone, and one's coming, these have gone. We're going to kind of get into that, and that's going to actually show us this path that's leading straight to the final empire. So love to hear thoughts on all that. Again, we're probably going to we're going to move to the 7 heads after this episode for sure. I just want to kind of try to start tying all these pieces together, because this beast is a system. It's an empire made up of 10 kings, all sorts of things going on with those 7 heads, which we'll get into, the spiritual things, all sorts of stuff going on with those 7 heads. As well as then it's being ridden by some sort of empire that just is the consumer of the world. They buy more product than anybody on the planet has ever bought. And they're deeply engaged in sexual immorality, and they have no problem slaughtering saints. That's kind of what we're dealing with, riding the beast of all things. And when you say riding, it's in control of. So love to hear your thoughts on all that. Again, any insight, put it in the comments below. If you like this video, click like and subscribe. Feel called to support this channel through Patreon. That link is also below. But the most important part of this channel is we take prayer requests, so don't ever hesitate to send that in. Thank you for watching this episode of God, Family, and Guns. And as always, love God, love your family, and love guns.